there was literally nothing for me to do. Now, had I wanted to be in control, had I been wanting to fight the moment, right? Had I been wanting to have her back and all of this stuff that people normally go through when they're grieving, it might have been a different story. You might find me in a gutter somewhere with a 40. What's going on, fam? Welcome back to the channel where we're living to love God and to make him known. I wanted to talk to y'all today about losing control. Because the less you control in your life, the more power you actually have. Say that again. The less control you have over your life, the more power you actually have. Now, in order to have this conversation, we need to define our terms. When I say control, it's having that direct influence over everything that occurs, right? Power is that ability to maintain your position, to stay on your square, to not be moved from where you are, right? And so why do I say the less you control, the more power you have? Because a lot of people think that by controlling everything, that they're in charge. A lot of people believe that if they were controlling every little bit of their life, that means that they're powerful. It means that, they're the boss, they're the one, right? But it is not possible to control everything in your life. And don't get me wrong, right? It's a different conversation between taking accountability and responsibility for everything and being in control. It's a wholly different conversation to recognize that you're not in control and still take responsibility for everything in your world. I mean, you kind of have to, but that's a different conversation for a different day. What we're talking about is again, losing control, giving up the ability or giving up the right to force your own will on your life. Now, why would anybody want to do that? I remember a conversation I had with my dad years ago, and to this day is probably the greatest piece of advice I've ever received. My grandmother was sick, his mom, right? My father's mom. She was sick. She was in and out of the hospital. She was between a hospital and a nursing home, and I was at college. And I'm having a conversation with him one day, and he is like, "Oh yeah, your grandmother's back in the hospital." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I got upset. I'm like, "Bro, what do you mean she's back in the hospital? Nobody told me anything, da-da-da-da." And he checked me. He was like, "Yo, like, why are you getting upset?" Like, because nobody's telling me anything, right? I felt like I was being kept out of the loop, all this stuff. My father said to me, he's like, what would you do about it? What could you do? Right? You're there, we're here. What influence do you have over this situation? And I was like, well, I could pray for her. He was like, exactly. He's like, do that. Then he was like, in life, control what you can control. Don't worry about what you can't. He wasn't telling me not to worry about my grandmother. He wasn't telling me not to be concerned about her. What he was telling me was, don't feel like I have any power over her situation. Because I was so emotionally invested in what was happening with her that I took myself out of my own power, right? Like I moved myself off of my square because I felt like I was owed something, right? I felt like they weren't keeping me in the loop or whatever. But taking that piece of advice, right? Taking that information, and now having lived, it's probably been 15 plus years since then. And the amount of relief that has come into my life since has been astounding, right? I can't tell you the peace that you receive when you finally let go of trying to control everything. Even most recently, with my wife, when she was on her healing journey, I recognized that there was a lot that I could not do. I recognized that there was a lot I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to take the disease that was fighting her body and take it into mine. If I could have, I would have, right? But I had to resort to rubbing her feet, getting her water, right? When she wanted me to go to the store and get her soups and her juices and wanted me to blend her juice her fruit and all of that. That's what I did, right? Like, I can control that. Everything else that was happening inside of her body, that's really left up to a power greater than myself. And I had to realize that really early on. But the reason we become more powerful when we release control. I'm not saying release responsibility. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when we release control, the need to make it happen our way. The reason we have more power is because we become unmoved, right? We begin to recognize that, oh snap, there is another power, there is a higher power in control of the world that we live in. Yes, our thoughts, our will, our emotions, all of that plays a role. But at the end of the day, God is in control. One of my favorite verses in scripture is Psalm 46:10, I think it is. It says, be still and know that I am God. That word in Hebrew, be still, literally means stop fighting. Stop resisting, right? You cannot resist the flow of what's occurring. If God has said it, that's what it's going to be, right? If God set it in motion, his plan is going to see itself out through to the end. And it's at the beginning of that psalm, right? Psalm 46, verses 1 and 2, where the key to power is written right there. It said, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in the time of trouble. And so we will not fear, even though the earth gives way. So it doesn't matter what's happening. There could be an earthquake, meteoroids, asteroids, whatever. The entire world can be collapsing. And because the Lord is our refuge, what we got to be afraid of? We do not have to worry. We do not have to fear, because God is not going to allow anything in this life ultimately to harm us. And when I mean ultimate harm, he will not allow our souls to be destroyed. That doesn't mean that we don't seek to live a great life while we are here in this 3D reality. No, work, build, dream, create, do all of that. And while you're doing that, don't fight, right? I love that phrase, right? Be still. Still, there is power in stillness. There is strength in stillness. You don't have to force your way through. I know it seems like it, because there are times you might feel like, hey, if I don't get this done, nobody else is going to do it. Well, the great thing about this world is you're not alone. You're not the only one that has a will. You're not the only one who has authority over this life. And when you submit your will to God's will, right? When you allow your egoic mind to live in subjection to your higher mind, everything smooths out. Everything smooths out. That doesn't mean that all problems will be eliminated. Problems, complexities, all of that occurs to strengthen us, to make us better. In order to work out those weak points, we need complexity. But it's in the complexity where we recognize God's goodness and we recognize God's grace. It's in that complexity where we can stand still and be a picture, right? Kind of statuesque, if you will, right? We can literally be going through the worst times in our life. Trust me, I've been there so far. You can be going through one of the worst things imaginable, and people will look at you, right? Like, yo, I had several people who don't know each other, people who never had conversations with each other. Shortly after my wife passed, people will call me up and they're like, yo, you good? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm chilling, And I was like, nah, I mean, I can see that. But the reason I'm asking is because, like, you're a little too calm to be going through what you're going through. And I'd have to tell them, like, bro, that's all God's grace. Because from the moment my wife took her last breath, then I'll never forget the moment for the rest of my life, being there in the hospital room with her. The moment she took her last breath, I'm like, all right, God, it's in your hands. She's in your hands. I'm in your hands. The kids are in your hands. There was literally nothing for me to do. Now, had I wanted to be in control, had I been wanting to fight the moment, right? Had I been wanting to have her back and all of this stuff that people normally go through when they're grieving, it might have been a different story. You might find me in a gutter somewhere with a 40 talking about who's the president, right? But like I said, man, I realized real fast, I'm not the one in control. As much as I want her here, as much as I wanted to continue to live life with her and grow older together, it wasn't in the cards for this lifetime. And I have to be content with that. And so the power that I gain from not fighting the moment is a strength that I can then give to my children. It's a strength I can share with other family. And I'm not without my weak moments, but I'm also not fighting what is. That's the ultimate message of what Psalm 46 is saying. And when you read it, there's a lot of war language, right? There's a lot of references to fighting, to war. Again, the world collapsing. But when you are still within yourself, the world around you moves slower. You can think more clearly. You can actually see what's occurring, and you're not seeing it through your emotions. So let go of wanting to have things all the way you want it. Because yes, that would be nice. Nobody would ever rub us the wrong way and nothing wrong would ever occur. But in this world, we have to move, we have to adapt. We have to be able to pivot, we have to be able to shift. And shifting, pivoting is easier when we're doing it from stillness. So don't let the world get you all up in a tizzy. Don't let these circumstances and situations really cause you to move off your block. Don't let life knock you off your square. You're too good for all that.